This video essay will be discussing how the national identity of, to us, unknown countries is contributed to by film, both at home and abroad. By unknown nations, I'm referring to countries that are generally unknown from our perspective, from the West, or that are generally misrepresented. It may be unclear at this point how a nation looks to other people abroad is relevant to its own national identity, but for the countries I'm going to mention, their perception internationally is very important in their national identity and has a considerable influence on it. So, I will be arguing that films can contribute very positively and very effectively to the national identity of these so-called unknown nations, both domestically and abroad, but also how they can have the opposite effect. So my examples are going to be taken from the two most influential and significant foreign sources of good films, China and Iran. First, I will be talking about the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This Chinese film was a worldwide cinematic phenomenon in the year 2000, unexpectedly grossing over 200 million worldwide, including over $100 million in the US alone, making it the most successful foreign language film in US history. It received 10 nominations at the Oscars, winning 4 of them. Essentially, the film was a show of Chinese Taoist and Confucian values. It showed beautiful Chinese scenery and intricate traditional costumes and decor, reinforcing the Chineseness of the film through its imagery. It can be argued that there is really no historical accuracy in the film, but when bearing in mind that there is no such thing as true history, and rather just interpretations of history, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is simply an entertainment-based portrayal of Chinese history, which instead attempts to show us the traditional Chinese core values present throughout its history and bring these back into its national identity. However, Derek Elley, a reviewer for Chinese films in Hollywood, said that the film was, quote, designed primarily to appeal to a general Western clientele. Therefore, something which is evident throughout the film as well, the film presents and emphasizes the classic Chinese national identity and merges it with a globalized culture, which makes sense considering China's increased global role. And thus, it fosters this national identity, which is both Chinese and Western, which perhaps best describes what China is today, and shows an evolution in the national identity and the culture of China, on the frontier between traditional Confucian values and modern, more Western values. Now to move on to Iran, I'll be talking about Asghar Farhadi, who managed to introduce the wider world to an Iranian film industry which had been exported before, but not to a mainstream audience. He was the first Iranian to win an Oscar for A Separation in 2011, and won an Oscar again at the last awards with The Salesman. Essentially, he takes normal stories such as divorce in A Separation or crime and marriage tension in The Salesman, and he situates them in an Iranian context to show a humanistic aspect of Iran, which is often overlooked, and move away from the Iranian stereotype. Donald K. Emerson, an expert on the Middle East and Asia, criticized the West for giving arbitrary nomenclature to other parts of the world, which for him provided a hugely oversimplified image of these regions. And Farhadi, through his films, removes this simplification by creating stories that are both Iranian and universal. And in doing so, Farhadi is contributing to Iran's national identity in two principal ways. The first being domestic. Farhadi himself said in an interview that, quote, "My countrymen are very happy and proud of this tremendous success since they feel my main character's emotions," which shows that he's helping Iranians realize their own national identity and culture. And the second way is internationally, by providing a new perception worldwide of Iran, which moves away from the aforementioned Middle Eastern stereotype. And overall, Farhadi separates himself from politics completely and therefore feeds a national identity which is independent from politics, focusing instead on its cultural and human aspects. And in doing so, Farhadi portrays a relatively unknown, to us, country in a completely new light. However, there are also instances when a film can have the exact opposite effect. This takes me back to the clip at the beginning of this video, which showed the film Borat. Borat is a 2006 mockumentary comedy film which portrays a Kazakh journalist traveling through America and shows extremely exaggerated, obscene, and often simply wrong representations of Kazakhstan and its culture. Ironically, Initially, Borat was very valuable in putting Kazakhstan into the mind map of people worldwide. However, once this had died down, the image of Borat had rubbed off deeply onto Kazakhstan due to its negative portrayal, and the Kazakh government even launched a multi-million-dollar Heart of Eurasia campaign to counter what they called the Borat effect. And the clip of people in the actual village that is shown at the opening scene of the film shows exactly this sentiment, how Borat is completely misrepresenting Kazakh culture and history and therefore contributing negatively to its national identity. However, overall, it must be said that Borat is a one-off, a comedy, ultimately more anti-American than anti-Kazakh. So overall, to conclude and to return to my original point, more serious films can contribute to their national identity positively by showing their history and culture in a new light, and can contribute to the national identity of lesser known nations by portraying them on an international level and removing preconceptions of the country by shedding light on their culture, such as in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or their humanism on a micro level for Asghar Farhadi, all of which in turn strengthen their national identity.